UFC Fight Night, Ankalaev versus Walker, full card predictions. It's been a long time off, about like 4 weeks since we've had a UFC card. This is a decent one. I'll start at the bottom, make my way to the top, as I always do. Um, First fight of the night is Felipe Bunes versus Joshua Van. For me, the first one of the night here, I'm going to go with Joshua Van. It is a slightly short notice fight for Van, but I don't think that's going to matter too much because Van, I think even though it's on short notice for him, he'll still be able to push the pace, keep the pressure on um, Felipe Bunes, and I don't think Felipe will be able to keep up with that. I mean, he's a regional level fighter. If you look through his record, he's also 34 years old. That's another thing you need to look at. At flyweight, 22-year-old Joshua Van already has two impressive UFC wins. Beat Zaga Sumagulov, um, and he beat him. Like, I know it was a split, but he should have won unanimously. It was clear that he won that fight. And then he beat Kevin Borjas, who's a decent up and comer, who won on the Contender Series. So he's beaten two like solid guys. And Bunas, I don't know what he does that's better than Zalgas or Kevin Borjas. Sure, he's got decent grappling, but I saw his striking. I watched his last few fights. Yuma Horiguchi's not really a good striker. He landed like a kind of like a looping left hook. I don't see him being able to do that on Van. Van has a very tight guard. Van throws a lot of good body shots. His combinations he works are very good, in my opinion. Good boxing, young guy, going to be improving a lot quicker. I think the UFC wants to make this Joshua Van guy a star, and I think that starts with him beating a 34-year-old regional fighter in Felipe Bunes here. Um, Tom Nolan and Nicholas Moda is fight number 2 on the prelims. For this one, I'm going to be going with Tom Nolan. Um, Tom Nolan's a much better striker, I believe, than Nicholas Moda. The problem with Moda is, if you look through his last few fights, right, he's 13-5 in the UFC. His last fight against Trey Ogden, embarrassing fight for him. I mean, Trey Ogden, I don't think he has any knockouts on his record. Well, let's make sure that he doesn't. He has no knockouts on his record, okay? And Nicholas Moda, I mean, he didn't get knocked out by him, but he got outstruck by him the entire fight. He was getting outstruck for 3 rounds, and then he was going to get submitted, or at least even if Ogden didn't get the submission, he would have won the decision. So he was dominating the fight on the ground and especially on the feet, which is just shows that Moda's not on this UFC level. Got knocked out in the first round by Manuel Torres. Um, got knocked out by Jim Miller. Now, no shame there. I mean, Torres is a decent, he's a solid fighter, and Jim Miller obviously is a legend. He's fighting later on the card, so I don't want to hate on him for that, but like, he hasn't beaten anyone really good. Cameron Van Camp's his best win. Now he's fighting Tom Nolan. This is a step up for Nolan. So if Nolan does get, I guess fraud checked here, it would be like, all right. I mean, he is a young guy. He's only 6-0, but I think Nolan has the tools to win this fight. Moda, he's got a check hook, and that's really all he's got. Um, that's really all he's got. I mean, he's looking for that counter. And if he doesn't find that counter, he's not going to win the fight. I mean, he doesn't throw a lot of volume. Nolan puts it on people. The one thing you could say about Nolan, like, he might not have the best ground game or whatever, but he's going to put it on Moda. I think he's going to, the volume's going to be there. Mod is going to get hurt. He's probably going to cover up. I could see a TKO win for Nolan. I just see him winning this fight. I mean, Moda, he's got the knockout power, but that's all he has. So if you're taking Moda to win, I would probably say take him by knockout because I don't see any other way he really beats Nolan. If it goes a distance, I just see Nolan having more like dog in him and winning the striking moments. And I don't see this taking place on the mat. Like I would actually, I don't, Nicholas Moda is not a grappler, neither is Nolan. So give me Moda to win that one. Oh, I'm sorry, give me Nolan to win that one. Give me Tom Nolan, not Moda. Give me Nolan. I think he wins. Weston Wilson and Gene Silva. This is another one. Like, you look at the last two. It's Van and Nolan. It makes sense why I'm picking them. I'm picking Gene Silva. Again, it makes sense. Weston Wilson's not a good fighter, and I just don't get why he's in the UFC. I'm not. Listen, this isn't like these guys are in the UFC. I know, like, they're living their dream and everything. I don't want to hate on him, but like, he's not good. He shouldn't be in the UFC. Look at his record. He lost to Teruto Ishihara by knockout in 3 minutes. And then he beat three guys in a row, 9-19, a 4-3, and an 8-5 opponent. And then he gets destroyed by Joe Anderson Brito, looking for like a leg lock and just gets his face battered in. Um, so he's just a jiu-jitsu. Well, like that's all he's got. He's just got jiu-jitsu. He's not a good striker. Gene Silva's Lord Assassin's gonna kill him on the feet. Weston Wilson, like I do think, sure, his grappling might be a little bit dangerous. He does have like pretty solid grappling. That is the best part of his game. But if this stays on the feet for more than like a minute or two, his striking is just so bad. And if he gets caught on the chin, he's going to sleep. So Gene Silva, easy pick there. He's a minus 950. I shouldn't even really spend time on it. We all know what's going to happen. Now to a much more interesting fight, we have Farid Basharat taking on Taylor Lapilus. I'm going with Farid Basharat. I actually really looked at this fight for quite a bit, but I am going to pick Farid Basharat. I think he's the better overall fighter. The thing I noticed with Taylor Lapilus is his striking is actually good. A lot of these guys, the MMA Factory guys, the guys like Cyril Gahn, him, um, there's other guys too from MMA Factory that are really good strikers. The thing is, as good of strikers they are, and sure, they might have good takedown defense against like lower level competition, against guys that aren't really that great. They can defend takedowns, keep it on the feet, and win. When you're fighting high level competition, and I believe Farid Basharat is absolutely high level. I think he's top 15 level at least. Um, he's well rounded. He's going to take down Lapilus. I think that's has to be the game plan for a guy like Basharat, training out of Extreme Couture with his brother. Um, Manel Cape, who's also on the card, trains there. I know his fight got canceled or scratched because he missed weight, but he's got a lot of good training partners. Does Basharat, and not that Lapilus doesn't. I'm just saying Basharat, like he's a really good He's 26 years old. He's the better grappler in the spot. He's a better wrestler in the spot. Clearly, he can get the takedowns on Lapilus. He might have a little bit of trouble controlling Lapilus, especially for the 3 rounds. But I do see him being able to get some takedowns. Even if this fight does play out a mix of grappling and striking, I think Basharat can mix it up better than Lapilus can. I think Lapilus will be more on the defense this fight, and the style of Lapilus, he likes to kind of stay in his range. And I don't know if I don't know if he's going to be able to touch Basharat too much because Basharat is a very intelligent striker. I like strikers, and not even strikers. I like fighters in general that have a very good octagon IQ. Um, Basharat's the type of guy, and both Basharat brothers are perfect examples of guys that you know they know MMA. They're young guys, but they're very smart in the game. They know what their game plan is. They're going to stick to it. Um, you look at a bunch of divisions, like every division has guys that are stick to game plans, guys that are smart, guys that like Bilal Muhammad's an example. So every division has them, but those are the type of guys you want to pick to win because they usually can find a way, outsmart their opponent, or kind of if they know they're not as good of a striker, they switch to the wrestling, which is what I think will happen here. So taking Farid Basharat. Um, Not sure why it's lagging like that, but either way, it's Marcus McGee, Gaston Bolanos next prelim. I'm taking Marcus McGee. Gaston Bolanos has no grappling. Again, a lot of these fights are pretty cut and dry to me. No, it is MMA, so anything can happen. Someone can go out there and get knocked out, get submitted. We've seen crazy stuff happen. It's very hard to predict exactly what's going to happen, but you look at the last few fights, the last four, there's kind of ways for all these guys to win. Basharat, he can win using his grappling and mix things up. Gene Silva should knock out Weston Wilson, who has no striking. Nicholas Moda, he only has power, and that's all he's got. And then Felipe Bunes is a regional fighter. When you look at McGee and Bolanos, it's the same thing. Marcus McGee's a more well-rounded fighter. Sure, he's a little bit older. Like he's 8-1 at 33 years old. He's not a young guy in the division, but he's a solid fighter. And Gaston Bolanos has a clear hole in the game. Gaston Bolanos has a clear grappling The grappling shouldn't be close. Marcus McGee, I know he's a striker, but I mean, he's got to at least try to grapple this fight, even if he does think he has an edge on the feet, because Marcus McGee probably has. I know Gaston has some like spinning back fist knockouts, and he has some cool knockouts in Bellator, but those are against very low level guys that don't know how to strike. I think Marcus McGee obviously knows how to strike. Fighting out of the MMA lab, one of the best gyms, like one of the best up and coming gyms, really in the sport. Um, Sean O'Malley, a bunch of other guys that are, Mario Batista on the card trains there. So they got a good gym of Kyler Phillips. They got a good gym of bantamweights and smaller guys in there that are very good. Gaston Bolanos, uh, really all he is a striker. That's all he is. He has good striking, but that's all he's got. And McGee's a much more well-rounded fighter. That's how I kind of look at these fights. I'm like, you know, Marcus McGee should win this fight because he has much more ways to do so. Bolaños, um, even if this fight stays on the feet, I think McGee is live. McGee definitely has a shot. I think it's competitive on the feet, but I think on the mat it should be a clear edge for McGee, who compared to Bolaños, who's just a striker that's been given. Against Aaron Phillips isn't even a good fighter, and he got his back taken rounds 2 and 3 and body triangled by Aaron Phillips. If you're telling me McGee can't do that, I tell you you're crazy. So I'm taking Marcus McGee to win. Next fight is Matthew Semmelsberger, Semi the Jedi versus Preston Parsons. Man, this is another one where I was back and forth on. I was really thinking about this one for a while. At first, I was thinking maybe I'm gonna go Preston Parsons. Maybe I'll roll the dice with Preston. And then I looked at it and I'm like, I don't think I can do that. I don't know. I don't think I can go Preston Parsons. And I know Preston Parsons, he's not a bad fighter. Um, if you look at him, he lost to D-Rod, he beat Evan Elder, and then he lost a split to Trevin Giles, which was actually a really competitive fight. But the thing I see with Semmelsberger is, I don't think Parsons, his striking isn't like, the worst we've ever seen, but it's not very good. And he does get hit. I think, he got hit clean by Giles with a jab plenty of times. If Semmelsberger connects with the right hand, like if he hits him with like cleanly, I think Parsons is going to be doing like the chicken dance. He's going to be wobbling all over the place. He's not going to know where he is. He's probably going to shoot and try to take down Semmelsberger, and maybe it works because look at Semmelsberger and look at the Jeremiah Wells fight. He had Wells hurt bad, and he couldn't finish him, and Wells ended up winning the fight because he just couldn't. He rocked Wells multiple times. They just couldn't find a way to finish him. Parsons, I just don't think Parsons is on that level of a Jeremiah Wells. Uros Medic is a better striker than Parsons. Jake Matthews, like he's fought some pretty good guys. I think Semmelsberger has fought the better level of competition. Trevin Giles, he's okay, but Evan Elder's a lightweight. He was a 7-0 lightweight, and Elder's he's a talented fighter, but you know he was undersized taking that fight on short notice. And then the D-Rod fight was, took a few good punches and Parsons didn't want to be in there. So I got to go with Matt Semmelsberger. I think he's probably, I don't want to say more of a dog because Parsons is like, he's not going to quit. He's not going to give up. But, if he takes a few good shots from Semmelsberger, I don't think that might change his mind, from trying to put the pressure on and trying to, shoot a lot. I think he might, I don't want to say like just show up, but Matt Semmelsberger hits like incredibly hard, and if he can't find a way to finish Parsons, then I don't know. Maybe he will get cut, but I think he has the ability to win this fight. Absolutely. Andrei Arlovsky and Waldo Cortez Acosta kicks off the main card. This whole card, is this just? Am I just set up to like embarrass myself here with all these picks because it seems so easy. Like whenever it seems easy, whenever it seems like it's so easy to make these picks, it always ends up like I always get a bunch of them wrong. These seem just too easy. I'm picking Waldo Cortez Acosta. I mean, Andre Arlovsky's about to be 45. Waldo Akala, like, I don't understand how people can. Yeah, I've seen some people during like this week trying to say, "Oh, Arlovsky is he's big underdog." The only way Arlovsky wins this fight is if like I don't even think he can knock out Waldo. Like, I don't know how he wins this fight. Waldo, he's 32 years old, 10-1. He hasn't beaten anyone really good, but you look at his last few opponents in the UFC: Jared Vandera, Chase Sherman, Lucas Bresky. Lost to Rogerio de Lima, but he's fighting a guy now in Andre Arlovsky who, if you look at his last two, he got knocked out by Dontel Mays, and he also lost to Marcos Rogerio de Lima. The Dontel Mays fight, if you're getting knocked out by Dontel Mays, anyone that loses to Dontel Mays in general shouldn't be fighting in MMA, because Dontel Mays is probably one of the worst fighters I've ever seen. He's god awful. But Andre Arlovsky, he lost to him. He got knocked out by him. So if you think I'm picking Arlovsky at 45 years old after he got knocked out by Dontel Mays, then I don't know what's wrong with you. Because if Waldo loses this fight, he should get cut. I don't care if he's coming up. He won his last fight. If he loses this fight, he gets cut. Every single card I say something like this. He should get cut if he loses this fight. There's certain guys. If you're given a 45-year-old opponent and you can't beat him, you're cut. You're gone. So either Waldo wins or he's done. In my mind. Next up is Phil Hawes taking on Bruno Ferreira. Give me Bruno Ferreira. Phil Hawes has no chin. It's only because of Phil Hawes having no chin is why I'm picking Bruno Ferreira, because Phil Hawes does have, he's a good wrestler, and he does have pretty solid hands. Like, we've seen him knock some guys out. We've seen him put the hands on some guys. I know Deron Wynn isn't really that talented, but a striker at least. He is a decent wrestler, but Phil Hawes just pieced him up on the feet, looked really good there. He's had some fights where he's looked dominant, but he's also had fights where he just gets flatlined. And if you look through his record, he's 35 years old. All of his loss, he has one submission loss, 4 knockout losses. Ikram Moiskarov was his last fight. That was back in 2023 in May. Got knocked out in the first round. Before that, fought Roman Dolidze. He was compromised from, I think it was it a knee? It was something that, it was a submission attempt from Dolidze. His knee was messed up. He was having trouble moving, and he ended up getting knocked out by Dolidze soon after. Then he had the Deron Wynn. Beat him there. Deron Wynn's not really UFC level. Lost to Chris Curtis, got knocked out by him. And then you look at the previous fights, he's beaten some decent guys when he first got into the UFC. Jacob Malkoun in 18 seconds, Nasruddin Imavov, and Kyle Dawkins. So, I mean, the Imavov win has aged pretty well. Like, he's had wins that are, that have aged pretty well. Mainly the Imavov win, but you look on the other side, Bruno Ferreira beat RoboCop, knocked him out, then lost to Nursultan Ruzaboyev by counter right, knockout, knocked him clean out. I also picked Nursultan Ruzaboyev as an underdog there, but that's neither here nor there. For this fight, the reason I'm picking Bruno is simply because I don't see Phil Hawes just wrestling for 15 minutes. And if he does that, then good for him. I'm not going to fault him. Like, if he does wrestle for 15 minutes and gets the win here, I'll congratulate him. I'll say, he did his job. He did his job if he goes out there and takes the path of least resistance. I just don't see it happening, I just see him, eventually, even if, maybe he has a dominant first round, Bruno survives, and the second round, Phil, strikes a little bit too long, gets knocked out. I just see it happening. Like, if he gets touched on the chin, he's going to get hurt bad and probably put out. So I have to go with Bruno Ferreira. We are up to the featured fight now because the Nicolau Manel fight is off. Ricky Simone and Mario Batista. Very, very talented, two talented fighters. Two very talented fighters. Good fight the UFC is putting on. they're around the same age. They're in the same kind of stage of their career, now or never stage, where this is your shot if you want to kind of make a run to the top. Ricky Simone just lost his last fight, but was on a roll before then, and that loss was to Song Yadong, who is one of, as we know, one of like top five guys at this point. I think Ricky Simone beats Mario Batista. Batista, again, he's another one of those MMA lab guys. Very, very good fighter. I just think Ricky Simone is overall the more talented um, fighter than Batista. I mean, he has the wrestling ability to take him down, take Batista down, or even if he doesn't, I think on the feet, Simone can win as well. I mean, Damone Blackshear gave Mario Batista a tough test, and that was on a week's notice. That was a week after Blackshear just beat, I think he beat Jose Johnson. Then he fought Mario Batista. He fought him on a week's notice and nearly won. I mean, it was a very competitive fight, very back and forth, very competitive. Um, Batista, like, he just didn't really look great in that one. And I think Ricky Simone, like, if he can get out grappled by Blackshear, and Blackshear, had a ton of good moments on that short notice against him, cutting weight for the second time, I just think Simone's a different level than Blackshear. So I'm going with Ricky Simone to beat Mario Batista. Like I said, though, two very high level guys. Mario Batista does have a few finishes before that. Finished Guido Canetti by submission, Benito Lopez, and Brian Keller, and then beat Jay Perrin. So we've got some wins beforehand. But the other thing I want to mention about Simone and Batista, you could say Simone, he's fought some, Brian Kelleher as well, but he fought a Sun Cell after, and then Jack Shore beat Jack Shore, who was undefeated at the time, and then lost to Song Yadong in a fight where, as I mentioned, it was Song Yadong's a very good up and comer. I think the level of competition for Simone's been better, um, more experience in his career as well. He's been in those five. I know this is a 3 rounder, but he's had that. He just had that 5 round fight, coming back down to 3 rounds. I think he'll have the cardio to push a pace on Mario Batista and get the win here. I guess this is the co-main event. Jim Miller and Gabriel Benitez, Mowgli. Um, I'm going with Jim fucking Miller. I'm going with Jim Miller. I have to go with Jim Miller. It's like, I've been going with Jim Miller. I can't go against him. Even if I think like it is sort of a dangerous fight right before UFC 300, Jim. Like, I don't want you, like, we don't want you to get hurt. We want you to be, you know, perfectly healthy and ready to go for 300. We all want to see it. Jim Miller is a legend of the sport. Um, Nothing but respect for him. Great fighter, was never like the top of, never a champion, never at the top, but like was always, always just a great UFC fighter, been around forever. So hats off to Jim Miller, and he's been doing pretty good lately. He lost to Alexander Hernandez 2 fights ago, but before that, I mean, Jesse Butler knocked him out. Donald Cerrone, Cowboy submitted him. Nicholas Moda, who we talked about previously, knocked him out, and then knocked out Eric Gonzalez. So Jim Miller's got power. Jim Miller has knockout ability. Um, the kind of concern that people have with him typically is his cardio over 3 rounds. What if if he gets pushed into the deep waters? I don't think Benitez is a guy that's going to be pushing Jim Miller into the deep waters. Maybe this does go a little bit later than people expect. Maybe it does get into round 2 or maybe round 3. But I don't think Benitez is going to be pushing a pace on Jim Miller. I just don't see that happening. I don't see, Benitez being like dog walking Jim Miller. Just don't see it at all. If anything, I see Jim Miller landing good shots, possibly putting Benitez out. Because if you look at Jim Miller, I mean, his last few, it's a career resurgence. At 40 years old, this guy's been knocking guys out. Lost a few, lost 4 in a row here to very, very good competition. Maybe not Trinaldo, but Anthony Pettis, 2017, Poirier, Hooker, Oliveira. He's fought a ton of top guys. Now he's not, he's kind of not fighting as good competition anymore. Alexander Hernandez lost to him, but that was a relatively competitive fight, and I think Hernandez is better than Gabriel Benitez, younger than him as well. So I know Benitez is 35 and Miller is 40, but I don't think this. I think it's Jim Miller. It's time for Jim Miller to roll. him to get to UFC 300. We all want to see it. He's got the ability to do it. Gabriel Benitez, we've heard all the stuff about how he's got the cap or the hardest kicks at AKA, which is complete bullshit. Everyone, don't buy it into that crap. The hardest kicks at AKA, he kicks harder than all the, than Rockhold and all the guys that are, 200 plus pounds that are can freaking, you know, like you think he kicks harder than those guys? I doubt it, but anyway, I'm going with Jim Miller. Never really been that impressed with Gabriel Benitez. He's a 50-50 UFC fighter. Charlie Ontiveros sucks. David Onama knocked him out. Billy Q beat him. Justin James not UFC level and lost to Omar Morales. So hasn't even been the most active. Jim Miller taking him out, and then he's going to UFC 300. We move along to the main event of the evening. The Manel Cap fight is off now, but if I would have picked the winner, I would have picked Manel Cap anyway. But he missed weight, and the fight's called off. So pretty sure it's not the first time he's missed weight either. So we'll see what happens there. Main event in the light heavyweight division, we have Magomed Ankalaev taking on Johnny Walker. Yeah, I'm gonna go Magomed Ankalaev. I'm gonna go with Magomed Ankalaev. His fights have just been so odd. Some of the fights that Ankalaev, he's. I'll be honest, he's had some closer fights than he's had some competitive, pretty close fights, but like the fight with Jan Blachowicz where he got his leg chewed up for part of that fight was kind of hobbling, having trouble walking, and then he took him down eventually and got the draw. And then the Thiago Santos fight got clipped early, and then the rest of the fight was just a very low volume, low output fight for Magomed, which he won narrowly. Johnny Walker, though, I think Walker's KO or bust here. I think really in most of Walker's fights, not all of them, but in a lot of Walker's fights against high level competition, he's just knockout like one punch or one knee or bust. He's going to land that big shot, and if he doesn't, he's going to lose. I think if this goes the distance, which I don't really see it going the distance, but if it does, I think Magomed's going to be the clear winner here. I think his grappling, his wrestling, he can use that if he wants to take down Johnny Walker, out grapple him, out wrestle him. I think he does have a path to victory doing that. But even if he doesn't, I think all he has to do is just be smart. Don't fall into the trap of Walker. Walker almost hit him with that flying knee, or the jump knee in the first fight. If he would have landed that, Ankalaev would have been put to sleep, and that would have been the end of that. But I think he knows he has to be careful. I think he knows the danger of Johnny Walker. And I'll tell you guys what, at plus 400, even though I think Ankalaev wins, he is the better fighter here. He does have more ways to win. So I have to pick the better fighter. But at plus 400, that's not a bad underdog. I'm just saying. So I like I said, I'm saying Johnny Walker, if he wins, it's probably going to be by knockout. I see that being the real only path to win. But plus 400, if his KO prop is I don't even know what it would be, but if it's an insane number, that might not be the worst thing to put a very small bet on. But like I said, I do think the better fighter should win, but Walker does have, most of his wins are by knockout. It is light heavyweight. He is very explosive, very athletic, dynamic, training out of SBG. So you can't completely write him off. I'm not going to write him off completely. I will give him the credit of he does have, that explosiveness to kind of knock out Ankalaev. But outside of that, I don't see him winning over 5. So there it is. There is my full card predictions for UFC Fight Night Ankalaev versus Walker. Next week's card is the Strickland and Duplessis pay-per-view. So that should be a little bit more interesting. Although there are some pretty solid fights on this card. I know the this one I was looking forward to got canceled. But anyways, thank you guys very much for watching. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.